You know when you ask your AI a question and the answer you get back feels, well, a little too human? Like it's coming from a gut feeling, not just cold, hard data. It sounds like science fiction, but some new research suggests there might be something to it.
And that's the big question, isn't it? Is the AI you're trusting with your code, your research, or even your finances actually prone to the very same biases and gut reactions that we are?
We all tend to think of AI as this purely logical machine, right? All calculation, no quirks. But a really fascinating paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research decided to put that whole idea to the test. They basically treated these AIs less like computer programs and more like subjects in a huge psychology experiment.
So, how in the world do you test an AI's mind? Well, it turns out you give it a psych exam. Seriously. The researchers used the exact same kinds of tests that have been used for decades to uncover our own strange mental shortcuts and biases.
And they went after the heavy hitters, the big models from OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and Meta. They put them through a whole battery of classic quizzes, the kind that are specifically designed to poke and prod at the irrational parts of human decision-making. Okay, now here's the really clever part. They split the questions into two types. On one side, you have preference tasks. These are all about your gut, what you want. You know, like, would you rather have $500 for sure or a 50-50 shot at $1,200? There's no single correct answer. It's all about your appetite for risk. But then you have belief tasks. These are pure logic puzzles. One right answer and a story.
And for every single question, they were looking for two kinds of answers. A rational response, which is the one that follows the cold hard math, and then a human-like response, which is when the AI makes the exact same irrational choice that, let's be honest, most of us humans make.
And this is where things get really, really weird. When the results came in, they showed something totally counterintuitive. The AIs weren't just getting more logical, and they weren't just getting more human. Somehow, they were doing both at the exact same time.
So the billion-dollar question is, how did the most powerful AIs on the planet actually do? Well, the answer reveals this deep, fascinating split right down the middle of their artificial minds.
Okay, take a look at this, because these two charts tell the whole story. On the left, that's the preference tasks, the gut feeling questions. The red area shows the human-like answers. And you see it, right? As the models get more advanced, like GPT-4, that red area gets bigger. They're becoming more like us. But now look at the chart on the right. That's for the belief tasks, the logic puzzles. Here, the blue shows the purely rational answers. And it's the complete opposite. The more advanced the AI, the more perfectly logical it becomes. They are literally evolving in two different directions at once.
So this is the core finding, right here. As these things get more powerful, their personal preferences, their wants, start to look more and more like ours, complete with all our weird, irrational biases. But when it comes to pure facts and logic, they become even more machine-like, even more perfectly rational. It's a genuine split personality.
All right, so you might be thinking, okay, but these are just abstract quizzes. Fair enough. What happens when you put these AIs into a situation with actual consequences, like, say, managing money?
Well, to find out, the researchers ran two more experiments, this time financial ones. First, a belief task. They had the AIs forecast a data series, like predicting future company earnings. Then, a preference task. They showed them a stock chart and asked how much they'd invest. Pure logic versus pure gut.
In that forecasting task, the smaller, less advanced AIs did something so human it's almost funny. They overreacted. They saw these big, dramatic trends and patterns in the data that just weren't really there. You know, the same way we see shapes in the clouds or think a stock is hot. But look at this. The bigger, more advanced models, they didn't fall for it. Their forecasts were almost perfectly rational, just sticking to the cold, hard numbers. This just nails down that pattern we saw. For logic tasks, more advanced means more machine. So what about that second test, the investing one? This isn't about facts, this is about feeling. How much are you willing to bet just based on the look of a chart? And here we go again, the story flips. The larger, more advanced AIs were more likely to be influenced by just the visual shape of the stock chart, a classic human bias. They paid less attention to the underlying numbers and more to the story the chart seemed to be telling. It confirms the pattern perfectly. For preference tasks, more advanced means more human.
So if these AIs are picking up our bad habits, that brings up a really important question.
Can we fix it? Can we prompt them or nudge them back toward being rational?
So the team tried to de-bias the models. They started playing with the instructions they gave the AI right before each question, just to see if they could prompt it to think more rationally.
And you're not going to believe what worked the best. This one simple sentence. They just asked the AI to put on the hat of a rational investor and to think about expected utility, which is really just a fancy way of saying play the odds. That's it. And it made a real difference.
Now, it wasn't a magic bullet. The effect was pretty small, but it was absolutely real. You could measure it. Just a simple change in perspective was enough to tone down its most human-like biases.
But here is the absolute craziest part of this entire study. Trying to be more helpful completely backfired. Giving the AI a detailed 4-step guide on how to be rational did nothing. And get this, when they summarized the very human biases it was supposed to avoid, it actually made the AI less rational and more human-like. It seems that for AIs, just like for us, information overload can be a very, very bad thing.
So, what on earth does all this mean for the future? Well, the big takeaway here is that we probably need to fundamentally rethink what an AI actually is.
We're not just building a faster calculator. The evidence here suggests we're creating a whole new kind of mind. A new player in our world with its own strange psychology that is somehow both alien in its logic and also weirdly familiar in its irrationality.
And all this leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? As these AIs get woven more and more into our lives, our finances, our society, how do we build a future with them? How do we learn to trust and collaborate with a new kind of intelligence that is, at the exact same time, superhumanly logical and all too human in its flaws?